always in my corner, right there when I want all these.
I'm Michelle Marga Cajes, taking up Bachelor of Arts in English Language, first year Black 2. So, our entire report was covered by the topic entitled Types of Proficiencies. Developing proficiency in second language learners means developing the skills to use language for a variety of purposes, in a variety of settings, and with a variety of people. There are 5 subtopics in our report. I and Miss Pacanza will discuss the first one, and the rest will be my group mates. So, here it goes. Fostering second language development in young children. Principle number 1. Bilingualism is an asset and should be fostered. So, we all know that bilingualism is the ability to speak 2 languages. As an individual, it is essential for us to know and to learn how to speak our native language, because how can we communicate with our family, friends, and all the people around us which are more closer to us if we can't know how to learn to speak our native language? And at the same time, it is essential for us to know how to speak English language, because we all know that English language is our universal language. It is the language that we can use to communicate foreign people or the people around the globe as a whole. That is why our bilingual status should be nurtured and enhanced. That's what it talks about in the principle number 1, which is the bilingualism is an asset and should be fostered. So let's move on to principle number 2. There is an ebb and flow to children's bilingualism. It is rare for both languages to be balanced. Just like most of us, our capability to speak our native language predominate from our capability to speak English language, because we commonly use our native language to communicate people all around us. Unlike in English language, just like me as a student, I can only have a chance to speak English language if I accidentally met some foreign people outside, or doing some reports, or participating in oral recitations. That is why it is hard for me to balance my 2 languages, but according to studies, there is a possibility that it can be balanced through reading more books, rendering much of our time learning English languages, and applying it in our day-to-day conversation. So that's what it talks about in principle number 2. Principle number 3. There are different cultural patterns in language use. So our cultural differences give us some hurdles in learning English language and communicating inside the classroom. To some other cultures, raising your hands and participating in classroom activities means overly assertive or arrogant. Also, some students can clearly understand if the discussion and guidelines of the teacher is through verbal communication. That is why the teacher will play its part. They will provide other learning styles and communication patterns that will fit for their students. Principle number 4. For some bilingual children, code switching is a normal language phenomenon. So in this principle, code switching is a normal thing, because young children is in the process of learning in the second language. Children acquiring second language are learning to switch languages in which they hear from their homes and communities. In the same manner, teachers should not hesitate to switch languages to accommodate the language and culture of their students. So the 5th principle up until to the last principle will be discussed by Miss Pacanza, and that would be all. Thank you.
Now let's talk about the fifth principle, which was entitled Children Come to Learn Second Languages in Many Different Ways. A child becomes bilingual in two different ways. The two most common is being simultaneous acquisition of two languages and successive acquisition of a second language. Simultaneous bilingualism is the exposure of two or more languages from during infancy or before a child turned 3 years old. This acquiring languages and becoming bilingual is also sometimes referred to as bilingual first language acquisition or BFLA, meaning that those children have two first languages. Next is the successive acquisition of a second language. When children are exposed to additional languages from age 3 or older, they are considered sequential or subsequent bilinguals. Sequential bilingualism occurs when the child acquires the second languages or language after having learned the first language. For example, when the parental tongue is different than the main language of the community or education system. The difference between the simultaneous acquisition and successive acquisition of language is that simultaneous is concurrently or done at the same time. On the other hand, successive acquisition is succeeding or following in order. We have 4 types of bilingualism that fall into 2 ways of learning languages have been identified. For types 1 and 2, children have had high exposure to both languages at an early age. First type is the simultaneous bilingualism. It is referred to children who have early exposure to both languages and are given ample opportunities to use both. So they are the children who are exposed to more than one language prior to age 3. Thus, they develop 2 or more languages equally through exposure and frequent opportunities to use each language. Second type is the receptive bilingualism. Receptive bilingualism refers to children who have high exposure to a second language but have little opportunity to use or practice it. This language is often the language of the child's parents and was taught to them when they were young, but speaking in it was not emphasized. Example, when parents talk to their children and the child responding them in English. For types 3 and 4, children are learning the second language sequentially after they have learned their first language. The third type is the rapid successive bilingualism. Rapid successive bilingualism refers to children who have had little exposure to a second language before entering school but have ample opportunity to use it once they enter. And the fourth type is the slow successive bilingualism. Refers to children who have had little exposure to a second language and who have or avail themselves of few opportunities and have low motivation to use it. Now let's proceed to the sixth principle, which is language is used to communicate meaning. Children will internalize a second language more readily if they are asked to engage in meaningful activities that require using the language. For children who are learning English as a second language, it is important that the teacher gauge which aspects of the language the child has acquired and which ones are still to be mastered. Wong Fillmore recommends a number of steps that teachers can use to engage their students. In order for the teachers to measure their students' language competence level, here are the steps that can assess them for their students' language development. First step is use demonstration, modeling, and role-playing. Teachers can use these methods so they can measure students' abilities, capabilities, and as well as knowledge of a second language through demonstrating, modeling, and role-playing activities in the classroom. Second, present new information in the context of known information. This would help teachers if how much the learner already knows about a given topic or related topics. Third, paraphrase often. Paraphrasing can enhance the creativity of a student. It develops students' skill in understanding text, so the students are able to create sentences by their own words. In this way, teachers could perceive the vocabulary of the children. The fifth step is use simple structures and avoid complex structures. Structure is a key component of early childhood education. It allows teachers to create framework for what they want their students to learn and how they should go about doing so. The sixth step is repeat the same sentence patterns and routines. Repeating words, a concept, or a skill allows students to form an understanding and even attempt to imitate it. And it provides the practice that children need to master new skills. And the last one is tailor questions for different levels of language competence and participation. It measures students' thinking and encourages them to think about things in different ways. When teacher asks questions, students learn to obtain information to enhance their own understanding of a topic. Now let's proceed to the seventh principle, which is language flourishes best in a language-rich environment. Teachers of children with limited English proficiency need to be good models of language use. In particular, they should encourage children to practice English as much as possible and provide reinforcement by expanding on the children's vocabulary repertoire and by speaking coherently. It is important for children learning English to interact with others in the classroom as much as possible. Speaking with their peers will give them a stronger reason for communicating. Second language learners also need to be exposed to meaningful literacy activities. This is especially important for children from homes where literacy activities may be rare. It is vital for teachers to make reading and writing appealing and significant to the children. They should encourage students to write about people, places, or activities that are important to them. Such topics will motivate students to take risks with a language that they might not take with artificial or meaningless subjects. And the last principle in fostering second language development in young children is the principle number 8, which is children should be encouraged to experiment with language. Learning a second language is similar to learning a first language in that a child needs to experiment and produce utterances that may be inaccurate yet reflect normal language development. In this way, the child is attempting to figure out the patterns and rules that govern the language. To correct the child's speech, teachers should rephrase or expand on what the child has already said. Feedback from peers will also help the children determine which phrases are right and wrong. While children may appear to be making more mistakes during experimentation, they are actually learning to internalize chunks of appropriate speech. They test these chunks of language by using them in situations that may or may not be appropriate. The feedback they receive helps them determine whether they have guessed correctly. This is very important principle in fostering second language, for it keeps the brain in good shape and enhances our cognitive skills and memory.
Good morning, Ma'am Deo. By the way, I'm Kyla Garcia, student of first year Bael Block 2. Today, I will report my topic. So, our group topic is all about the types of proficiencies. And my assigned topic is all about the instructional conversation in Native American students. So, what is instructional conversation? Instructional conversation, it can be effective method for raising the low academic achievement levels of various groups of Native American students. It is a dialogue between the teachers and the students in which prior knowledge and experience are woven together with new material to build higher understanding. IC or instructional conversation must take into account the following factors concerning the indigenous cultures of their students. So the first factors is the social linguistics. So what is the social linguistics? Social linguistics is a conversation regarding the conversational style vary across cultures. For example, when a teacher and students from different culture or from different cultural background attempts to communicate, confusion and misunderstanding will arise as their communication style interact. So, this because both parties involved have no prior understanding of one's another cultural based communicative style or their communicative conversation. The second factor is the cognition. In schools everywhere, this is a tendency to emphasize verbal over visual symbolic thinking and to approach situations and analytically analytically rather than holistically. For example, the students came from different school. It follows that student whose cognitive tendencies to, to do not match those school expectations are more likely to be less academically successful. This because as instructional conversation or IC to be effective by providing support when cognitive strategies are less familiar to students and by capitalizing on students' preferred ways of thinking, and the teachers need to emphasize verbal or analytically skilled instructions and can be more clear to be more effective when using a visual or holistic approach. Next is the motivation. So, what is a motivation? In Native American student may not be motivated to participate in instructional conversation at school because they are not interested in the materials they use or they are supposed to be discussing. So, for example, or the explanation is this part of instructional conversation or IC, family and friends also have a big part of the students to motivate them and give interest of study, and also to the teachers who passionate to give knowledge and motivation of the students. And next is the social organization. So what is social organization? It is a primarily whole class oriented with a teacher who leads instructions or who instruct and demonstrate to the whole group. So for example, the 7 to 8 years old assigned to care for an infant sibling. These children needs a out-of-school group to help this responsibility, like the other siblings. Before he take the responsibilities to take care an infant, it should be undergo oriented first and give guides of what things he or she might do in taking care of an infant.
Good day to you, Ma'am Deo. So today, I am going to discuss the student motivation and learning. So first, what is student motivation? So student motivation naturally has to do with students' desire to participate in the learning process. But it also concerns the reason or goals that underlie their involvement or non-involvement in the academic activities. So, as a student like me, there are a lot of teachers motivates us to study hard and to do our tasks as a student. Some of my goals motivates me to do good in school and to do my tasks in school activities. In this way, we can develop ourselves in learning. We students should motivate ourselves to be participate in learning process. So, the factors that influence the development of students' motivation are through general experience, communication, direct, and teachers. The question is, how can motivation to learn be fostered in the school setting? So, it is essential to teachers to view themselves as active agents of stimulating students' motivation to learn. So, the first goal of teachers is to know where their students are lack of confidence, and when they know it, they're going to find ways to motivate their students. So, the example ways of educators is to help students to concentrate on their tasks rather than becoming distracted by fear of failure.
My name is Mary Jean A. Bautista, first year BAEL student Block 2. My topic is all about language learning strategies. Learning strategies are specific actions, behaviors, steps, or techniques students use often concisely to improve their progress in apprehending, internalizing, and using the learners. Next, good language learners. As a good language learners are willing and accurate guessers, have a strong drive to communicate, are often uninhibited, are willing to make mistakes, focus on form by looking for patterns and analyzing, take advantage of all practice opportunities, monitor their speech as well as that of others, and pay attention to meaning. Next is the effectiveness and orchestration of learning strategies. Use appropriate language learning strategies often result in improved proficiency or achievement overall or in specific skills areas. Next is successful language learners tend to select strategies that work well together in a highly orchestrated way. Next is the principle of language acquisition. First is cognitive and metacognitive strategies. Cognitive and metacognitive strategies are often used together, supporting each other. Next is certain strategies or cluster of strategies are linked to particular language skills or tasks. For example, learners writing, like learners writing benefits from the learner's strategies of planning, self-monitoring, deduction, and substitution. Learning acquisition speaking demands strategies such as rest-taking, paraphrasing, circumlocution, self-monitoring, and self-evaluation. Learners' listening comprehension gains from strategies of elaboration, inferencing, selective attention, and self-monitoring, while reading comprehension uses strategies like reading aloud, guessing, deduction, and summarizing. Next is the powerful social and effective strategies are found less often in learning research. This is perhaps because these behaviors are not studied frequently by learning researchers, and because learners are not familiar with paying attention to their own feelings and social relationship as part of the learning process. Next is the factors influencing the choice of learning strategies. First is motivation. Motivation is more motivated student tended to use more strategies than less motivated student, and the particular reason for studying the language. Motivational orientation, especially as related to career field, was important in the choice of strategies. Next is gender. Females reported greater overall strategy use than males in many studies, although sometimes males surpass females in the use of a particular strategy. Next is cultural background. Cultural background is rote memorization and other forms of memorization were more prevalent among some Asian students than among students from other cultural backgrounds. Certain other cultures also appeared to encourage these strategies among learners. Next is attitude and beliefs. Attitudes, these were reported to have a profound effect on the strategies learners choose, with negative attitude and beliefs often causing poor strategy use or lack of orchestration of strategies.
In Oxford 1998 synthesized existing research on how the following factors influence the choice of strategies used among students learning a second language. First, motivation. More motivated students tended to use more strategies than less motivated students, and the particular reason for studying the language was important in the choice of strategies. Second, gender. Females reported greater overall strategies used than males in many studies, although sometimes males surpass females in the use of particular strategies. Third, cultural background. Rote memorization and other forms of memorization were prevalent among some Asian students than among students from the cultural background. Certain other cultures also appear to encourage this strategy among the learners. Fourth, attitudes and beliefs. These were reported to have a profound effect on the strategies learners choose, with the negative attitudes and beliefs often causing poor strategy use or lack of orchestrations of strategies. Fifth, the type of task. The nature of tasks help determine the strategies naturally employed to carry out the task. Sixth, age in L2 stage. Students of different ages and stages of L2 learning use different strategies, with certain strategies often being employed by older or more advanced students. Seventh, learning style. Learning style, generally approach to language learning, often determine the choice of L2 learning strategies. For example, analytic style. Students prefer strategies such as contrastive analysis, role learning, and dissecting words and phrases, while global students use strategies to find meaning, guessing, scanning, predicting, and the converse without knowing all the words, paraphrasing, and gesturing. 8. Tolerance of ambiguity. Students who were more tolerant of ambiguity used significantly different learning strategies in some instances than did students who were less tolerant of ambiguity.
Good day, sir. I'm going to report my topic about 3 misconceptions about age and language second learning. Age has often been considered a major inverse factor for success in learning a second or foreign language. However, researchers have committed 3 types of errors in making this claim. First, misinterpretation. Second, misattribution. And third, misemphasis. These three types of errors have a myth and fact. Misinterpretation. The myth of misinterpretation is children pick up language quickly. And then the fact, older learners are generally faster and more efficient in the initial stage of language second learning. Then the myth of misattribution, differences in brain activation patterns between children and adults during language learning explain language proficiency differences. Then the fact of misattribution, no link has been established between language second learning and the state of neural networks. It is possible that adult and children learners localize their learning differently without showing different learning outcomes. Then the myth of misemphasis, group comparisons show adults are not capable of achieving native-like proficiency in a second language. Then the fact of misemphasis, some adult learners have outperformed early learners. Cognitive, motivational, and environmental factors are more important than age. Most adults fail to engage in ways that lead to high levels of success. The three misconceptions about age and language second learning have implications. First, age does influence language learning, but primarily because it is associated with social, psychological, educational, and other factors can affect language second proficiency, not because of any critical period that limits the possibility of language learning by adults. Then second, foreign language teaching in the early grades will be able to cover only half as much material in year as the middle school course, which in turn will progress much more slowly than the secondary of university course. Third, in the early grades, first language instruction is more important than second language for ultimate literacy and academic achievement in the language second. Fourth, children in late exit bilingual programs do better than those in early exit programs. Fifth, children who arrive as immigrants in new schools in later grades show better academic performance than those who start in kindergarten. Sixth, children who start learning English after the early elementary years, even as late as during high school, can become native-like speakers with highly motivating, well-structured learning environment.
Se acabó. Free drinks in the house. Word.